Hello, everyone. This is Gregory T. Roberts, and it's time for Torn in Two. It's your political show. The date is February 12th. The temperature outside is 23 degrees, high of 25, low of 16, and cloudy. Snow, snow this weekend, so get ready. Also, it's Valentine weekend, so buy those cards. Take the time to buy those cards. I'm not one of those people that believe and that just show people love every day. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk to. Our guest today is I'm so excited to be talking to Bob Gould. He's a professor in journalism at MSU. Co-hosting will be Pastor Melvin Burns. He will be in as well. Just a couple of footnotes that I just want to talk to you about. The title of the show is called Journalism 101. I want to thank you for listening to the program on 103.7 and M106. You also can watch the show and give questions live on those Facebook pages, WVS 103.7 and M106. We have a lot to talk about. Of course, yeah, what's happening in Washington is, of course, impeachment. The prosecutor or the House finished, and now it's up to President Trump, former President Trump. Right now, lawyers are arguing their points. They will not spend a lot of time, according to sources. They will not spend a lot of time arguing their point. The House spent 10 hours arguing their points and they didn't use witnesses. They used a lot of tweets, a lot of past videos for their argument. And what is happening is the same thing is happening as the defense. I'm not going to say anything because you know what we talk about. We're not going to just put our opinions out there. This is about facts. We will have facts next week. I will say this, because of the vote earlier with the Senate, where 5 Republicans came over and voted on the Democrat side, they need 17 votes to impeach the president. That is very, very unlikely to happen. Well, speaking of this guy right here is a broadcast professional. He's at MSU School of Journalism, News. There's so much. Let's get him in and let's find out and talk to him. Mr. Bob Gould, how are you doing, sir?
Greg, it's good to be here. Thanks.
Welcome to the team, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to
Would
be
you
here.
tell people, talk to people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I teach in the School of Journalism at Michigan State University, and I'm a broadcast professor here. We call ourselves a broadcast professor of practice because what that means is I have experience out in the field. So for about 17 years, I worked in television news. And I was in the Grand Rapids area. I worked at WZZM, which you all know there out in Muskegon fairly well. And I was a content producer of news. I shot video and edited news stories every day. So I used to go out with reporters and bring the visuals home to the viewer, each day. So now, in the last 14 years, I've been teaching here and teaching students how to be journalists, how to be broadcasters, how to be reporters. And it's been pretty exciting. We've had some pretty good success doing that.
Okay, well, let's break the glass and get rid of the smoke and get right into the details.
Yeah,
you teaching kids journalism. What's the first lessons that you teach? The basic rule of journalism.
Well, it's getting verifiable sources and checking your facts. I mean, those are the big things. And also, as a visual guy that I am, when I teach video, we also try to let everybody know that we don't stage video events. We don't stage shooting the video. We don't manipulate the video. When you if you're shooting a wedding, photos, you can put the photos into Photoshop and manipulate them and change them and enhance them. In television, you can't really do that. We have to be as honest as we can. So we have to tell everybody, one, checking facts and verifying them with multiple sources, and really be skeptical. Everybody's got to be a skeptic, right?
Okay.
So, and what I mean by that is, don't believe everything you see or read. It always has to be some sort of verification process. You can't just go with what you think. And so many times you hear this where you say, okay, we want to be first, but we're not sure we verified it. Well, you can't be, you got to be right before you're first. And that's so critical. So that's kind of those are the basic tenets of what we teach in journalism.
Okay. Actually, I want you to repeat something for me if you could. Verify your sources, because in news so far, and matter of fact, speaking of news, our co-host is coming on and he is here. Pastor Melvin Burns, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Meet Bob here. We're doing it live here.
Yes.
So let's get back into it.
Melvin,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Your sources, because over the years we have seen a big change in news, especially with news cycles running 24 hours. We've seen it used to be in reporting the news, there was a fire on First Street at 12:35, reported by the fire department. It was put out at 4:10, and that was part of the news. But the news has changed and stretched. How have you seen the news change since you've been in?
Well, the biggest issue, of course, we all know is the I guess the advancement or the invention of the 24-hour news cycle. So once we started seeing CNN and MSNBC and Fox News have this constant 24 hours of news, 24 hours of news, it's changed. It changed everything, really. And what I see is local news is staying steadfast, right? I think it's always been kind of it's straight. I think more middle of the road. You don't see a lot of commentary, but the national news is and the cable networks is where I think we have where we've seen a lot of the change. And we talk about how you might see some news and some information, and then there's commentary on these networks. So what the hardest part to teach students is they think that when they see MSNBC or Fox News or CNN, what they're watching is always the objective truth. And it isn't always, because there are pundits that spin the news, and on both sides of the political spectrum,
Right.
you see whether it leans left or leans right, there's always commentary to talk about this. And this makes it difficult. How do you decipher when you and I grew up in a time of like you said, Walter Cronkite and Tom Brokaw and Peter Jennings, and these guys who, you watch the nightly news. And I feel like even now you watch NBC or ABC or even CBS. I think you get a more middle of the road approach to the news. And so you have to tell everybody when I teach, you have to teach them, and it's all about media and news literacy, really. And what I mean by that is how to consume news. And so you have to tell them to watch all different. You can't just watch one station or one network. You have to
Right.
a lot of different ways, right?
Right.
And so sometimes my students get that, and sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. But that's what I've seen, and we've all seen it. We've all seen how this goes.
With so many new terms like fake news and all kinds of things, how do you teach a student to take their political beliefs or their personal beliefs and not throw it into the spin, but report the actual news?
Yeah, it's very difficult now. It's more so, and I'll tell you what's probably more difficult is the this whole thing where they have to remain objective, even, on their social platforms. You can't put a yard sign in your yard. You can't wear a pin or a T-shirt promoting a political cause. You can't go to a rally that has, unless you're covering it, unless you're there to, or you're there to be an objective observer. And so that's difficult for students because they're used to advocacy. They've kind of grown up in this, let's fight for what we believe in. And you have to say, okay, this is a different animal now. If you're going to be on social platforms spouting an opinion, it better be among your close friends and locked down with a private account. I know a lot of friends, former students that they've changed their name, whatever, they've got a private account, so they can't be traced back. Even that is dangerous, really.
Right.
So, and you know what? It's not just about political beliefs or bias in that sense, but a lot of it is when it could be small words that you don't even realize is an opinion.
Right.
Just descriptor words like "this is a beautiful thing." They say the word "beautiful" or "sad," and I always say, you know what? Let the people who you interview say those words, and all you need to do is say the facts. Just make it straight. You can have a tone in your voice when you present the news, and if it's emotional and if it's sad, and if something happens where clearly it's an emotionally charged thing, that will come through in the story without you having to say it, right? So yeah, it's a difficult thing to teach, and sometimes, again, by the end of their career in college, they get it. But boy, when they get to their first job, they better well get it. Otherwise, they're not going to stand a chance. So
you brought up a very interesting point about like staying neutral, like not having political signs in my. I do that even now. No political signs in my yard. I am here to bring the news, right, left, or indifferent. There's going to be times that you hate me and times that you love me, because what we're going to do is try to break through and get through that smoke. And what I find is, and I just want to hear your opinion on it. You think, as far as reporting, that a lot of people they want to be first, and they've gotten kind of lazy on checking their sources.
yeah, I mean, that happens a lot, and what happens too is, I mean, look, it's not a perfect science, and because it's 24/7, you're prone to a lot more mistakes than we've ever have. Okay, so journalists they do make mistakes. I'm not talking about mistakes as much as I'm talking about malpractice, if you will. Right? So there's a difference between error. When you've checked everything and you think you've got it all right, and then something goes wrong. That happens, or you misspell someone's name, or you incorrectly identify someone. Those are mistakes. So yeah, you have to be careful about trying to verify all this stuff. I mean, it's got to be out there, and if you make a mistake, you have to own up to it, right?
Right. Melvin, jump in whenever you feel free.
Yeah, and I gotta apologize for being late. Barb, we got a question. I hope it's not redundant, but I grew up in the era of waiting for Sports Illustrated to get that photo, the cover, or Ebony magazine, who's on the cover this week, and just is photojournalism. Is it still there? I know you still teach it, but is there still a thirst for that great picture? I'm sure you probably think of a picture that kind of drew you into photography early on.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I sure hope so. I think there is. I mean, but maybe I'm in the bubble too much with that. There are, I've got a lot of very good friends who are photojournalists, and the whole adage of a picture is worth 1,000 words is so true. But the image just it says something when you see something beautiful like that, right? It's we can all shoot photos from our iPhone now, but it takes somebody who's got a trained eye and to be able to capture something candidly, or in its own, and not in a staged sort of way. I was president of the National Press Photographers Association back in the mid 2000s, 2006, I think, and we had at the time 7 to 8,000 members nationally, and now it's a lot less than that because it isn't as I mean, the publications aren't putting the emphasis as much as they should back into photojournalism,
Mhm.
which is a terrible shame. I mean,
Yes.
I'm a big advocate in great visuals. Visuals shouldn't be used for window dressing. In other
Okay.
words, if you see a social media post with a photo in it, it shouldn't just be there just to dress up the post. I mean, it should have context with what the copy is saying, right?
Right.
It should go together, and so we don't see that as much as we should, and that's really unfortunate. So I have a thirst for it. I mean, I miss the days of that too. I love, I got magazines. I wish I could show you. I just put them in the other room here. There are bags stacked full of the best of photojournalism
Oh gosh, yeah.
magazines we get every year from the National Press Photographers, and it goes through the best photos of the year. And a friend of mine donated them all to me, his whole collection to use in classes, and it's really kind of it's fun to look through these old photos and really feel good about it, But
Yeah.
I hope that. I mean, I think there's still a market for it for sure, and you see, and in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, when you start watching CNN or any of these networks now, you will notice they're using a lot more still photographs
Yes.
in
Yes.
their stories
Mhm.
than video, and most of them are through the stock photo agency Getty Images. Getty is a photo agency that people can subscribe to. And the photojournalists are members of, where they can put their photos up, and then they sell their photos. So they are being used more and more on a television medium, which I never expected to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the reason is because of the pandemic. I think we have less access video to shoot video.
Okay.
Maybe more, and I'm just as a guess. Maybe it's just that we have more access that way, but for photojournalists rather than video journalists, I guess.
Now here's another question: how crazy and how nuts does it drive you? It drives me crazy because it must be true because Sally said it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It was tweeted out, and it must be true because that person said it, and it is journalism. It is not journalism. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a funny story, and then I'll kind of backtrack. So remind me if I get lost in the in down a rabbit hole here. But
Don't worry, it happens all the time.
last night, my sister and I were on the phone, and I was looking through Twitter, and I found this story, and I'm trying to see if I can remember it right. A young, maybe a teen, maybe 19, 20-year-old, a man was at a Civil War reenactment. Okay. And he lost his pet rooster at a Cracker Barrel. Okay, so the headline was remarkable because, and I wish I could read it to you because I'd have to look for it, but it said something like, rooster returned to owner after he was lost at Cracker Barrel following a Civil War reenactment. Now, this headline cannot be real, right? It sounds so far-fetched. And so, I went through my process. I clicked on the link that was provided, and it was something in Alabama, and I read the article. It was this long, local newspaper that posted it. And then I found out that the rooster had a Instagram page. So I went and looked at the Instagram. So even then I was still, and my sister and I were like, are we sure this is real? And I said, I think this is real. And then I saw an NBC journalist share it. And she's like, wait, what happened here? It was very funny. So, you always have to, you look at these things, you go, now I'm like, oh, I don't know if I believe that, I'm that way. I look at everything. And so what bothers me though, is when you see people who post stuff with no links, it's just a meme with a graphic, with somebody apparently quoted something, or I
Yeah.
read USA Today, so it must be real. When you look it up, it was never in USA Today. And there's so much proliferation of the spreading of this false information, and that's our downfall. It's doomed, and now that Facebook and Twitter are starting to crack down on this kind of stuff, but it's a lot better. But we're still seeing it, and it spreads and spreads and spreads. And I've got good friends on both sides of the political spectrum, and they post this stuff, and I go, look it up. You go to Snopes.com. This was something happened 5 years ago. I mean,
Right.
around 5 years ago, or you see a celebrity died. Yeah, that happened 5 years ago. Why are you posting it again? I mean, it does drive me crazy. And as a journalist, I can't. I've just become one of these people who are consistently skeptical about everything I see.
Right.
I mean, there's all kinds of examples I show in class about this. Where I mean, Jimmy Kimmel did something. He created this viral video, and I show this all the time. And it was this girl who set herself on fire, and she was twerking in her apartment. And it turned out that Jimmy Kimmel set the whole thing up, but you didn't know it. It just went viral. It was on every network. Every network aired this thing. Good Morning America, the Today Show, and across the country we saw clips of who aired it. And Jimmy Kimmel then came back and brought the girl on. She's an actress and a stunt person, and she's and we just wanted to see how viral we could make something. So it's out. It's out there.
Right. Well, you're watching 22 on 103.7 The Beat and M106. Our guest is Bob Gould, professor at Michigan State University, and my co-host, Pastor Melvin Burns. All right, let's jump back into it, guys. So you said, and I noticed that because the administrations have changed, like you said, things that were posted 5 years ago are starting to come back again. And my thing is, what do you do about this copy and paste generation where they copy and paste somebody else's opinion, and that's their opinion without them even thinking of what their opinion is?
Yeah, I mean, we've just devolved with this social media that everybody can steal everything, and everything is free, and there's no copyright rules or laws, and it's become a free for all. And it's unfortunate because in some cases, if it's a copyright infringement, somebody's not getting paid, and that's unfortunate, right? Somebody should get paid for the usage of whatever you're borrowing, as you call it, borrowing, honoring, stealing. So, but if somebody, copies a quote or, what's the thing is everything on the internet is true, signed Abe Lincoln. You know what I mean? Which, by the way, it's Lincoln's birthday today, right? So, so I've been told. But it's you can't have this sharing of ideas or stealing of somebody else's, putting your name on something else. I mean, I had a video on YouTube that somebody literally they burned it or downloaded the video and uploaded it with their name on it, and they started sharing the video, and it was something I produced, so with their name on it. And I said, you either make this private, or I'm going to have to report you to YouTube. And he took it down. And he was mad at me, okay.
Oh, well.
Yeah, well, if you want to share it, feel free to share it. You can put it on your YouTube page and share it. I don't care. But share, give me the honor of having, I mean, I'm not making any money on it, but I at least want the credit for it. So, I don't, it's a struggle sometimes when you see this free for all happening where it's taken. And,
what do you do? I mean, for people out there that say they want the truth. Now they say they don't want left or right. They want the truth. Okay, so what does that person do? How does that person get to the truth of an article or what's going on?
Yeah, this is a hard question, and I don't have probably the best answer for this, because at times I don't have the answer. I mean, I believe when I read something and I verify it, I look it up, and it comes from somebody of authority that I know I can believe and trust. Then I take it for what it is. And so you have to, again, if it feels any way not right, then it may not be. If I mean, there's one thing to talk about opinion. I mean, I'm trying to stay out of the political end of this, because I don't want to get myself in trouble. But
And that's the way we do all the time.
That never happens on this show. Never
But I mean,
happens.
if there are facts and then there are misstatements of the facts and there are out and out lies, and things can be proven. Now there are some things that can be said that aren't proven that you believe are true, right? But not necessarily proven yet, and that's your opinion. But facts are facts. I mean, they're either facts or they're not facts. I mean, you can't. Facts are not just based on your whether you agree with them or not. Okay, so if you don't agree with what people are saying are facts, even though they are, if it's a true story, a true fact, that doesn't mean it's not factual or that it's fake news, as we've heard the term.
Now, Bob, can you say it again, because you keep saying something that's very important. You keep saying that you research, you look at, you just don't look at something just because it was said on this particular news cycle or this person. It is facts. It is. But what we're finding is that so many in the impeachment I was watching before I got here, we saw the defense use something that was used yesterday by the prosecution and turned one word turned totally twisted. And what I'm finding out is that people are not taking the time to find out what the truth is. It is just easier just to depend. A lot of people, for instance, in Washington in January 6th, got trapped because they said, and a lot of people are saying, that the president told us to come. And so I'm finding a lot of stuff out of it. And I know you're trying to be political safe, but my thing is, how do we get to that point where people, when they research the truth, they go for the truth and not the okey doke?
Well, you have to look at what's presented in front of you and who the sources are. So, I mean, if you take the case of the impeachment and you look at the video that was presented, where the case is trying to say, okay, is the president, the former president, did he incite violence and did he tell people to go do this? When you hear people who were at the protest, at the riot, when you hear them say, the president told me to be here, and then when the president told him to go home, and you hear people saying, all right, guys, he told us to go home. That's pretty clear in my head that there are people who, maybe not everybody, but there were people there that did what he told them to do. And what they believe he told them to do, which was to go and go to the Capitol. Now, if you're talking about the word fight, like they're trying to say, well, fight can be used. Fight is political rhetoric in one case, but maybe not another. That's where the prosecution builds a case, and that's how. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I used to teach media at law, so I studied on this stuff a little bit. And again, so I take this with whatever knowledge I know, not going to law school. But I know that, each side will try and build a case. And when there's enough evidence and enough pieces to the puzzle that kind of fit together, then, you can build your case and have a conviction. I mean, in a court of law, this is a different animal in the Senate when you have a political division like there is now.
Mhm.
So, when you then, as the defense is saying, well, the word fight is used all the time by everybody, and it's really just political speak, so it depends on, so you as a viewer, as a general public, have to look at that and say, well, who do I believe? As if you were a juror, who would you believe? Who's giving me the best facts in this case? But when I read something, or when I watch something on television and I see that there are legitimate people who have commented with what they believe is, factual, because they're in the know, or they've seen something specific happen, or that this happened, or that happened, that seems to be, to me, pretty credible.
Mhm.
But if it's somebody who is pure commentary, well, then you sort of take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But yeah, I mean, it is not easy. There's no easy way to teach literacy right now, other than, for me, high school government classes are required, right? In your senior year, you got to take your high school government. My son's a senior in high school. He's got it in government right now. I mean, why not have a news literacy class? Why not?
Right.
Because it's not just journalists, right? I teach news literacy in my class to budding journalists, but it would be nice to have a class where people learn how to be responsible consumers of news. I mean,
that's interesting.
Can
Yeah.
you say that
Yeah,
again?
that's interesting. Yeah.
Would you please say that again?
There needs to be a class where people can be responsible consumers of news. They can learn to be responsible consumers of news. It's like anything. You might go to the art museum and go, I don't get it. I don't like this. Like, why is this splash painting interesting? Why do
Right.
people find that art? Well, until you study it and you understand what that's all about. Why is that art? Why is that, why is that interesting? Why is this music? I'm a musician, and I love to play. And so some music I like rather than others, and sometimes you don't understand. I may not understand like certain genres of music, but I can appreciate them for the art that they are, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's the same thing with consuming news. If we're going to have a society where we have this First Amendment right to freedom of the press, and we have the freedom of freedom of speech to the limits that we have them, um, why shouldn't we be taught how to
Yeah.
utilize that freedom, right?
Right, because I mean, we have that freedom of speech, but if if you're taking that freedom of speech and not telling the truth, then there's an issue there.
Yeah, and that's where you can get in trouble. I mean, you have the right to not tell the truth. Okay. That is your freedom. That is what you have the right to criticize government. There are no sedition laws, right? It's I mean, but gone are the days where if you criticize the king, you
Oh,
off with your head, right? So, right. So, but we can criticize and we can tell falsehoods. But what gets you in trouble is when those falsehoods can defame somebody, you know, or those falsehoods can damage someone's reputation, or I mean, look at Dominion and Smartmatic. They're suing. There's billion-dollar lawsuits because these networks and these lawyers have defamed their company. They're claiming it has defamed their company and their good name. So I mean, and now these networks are backing off because they're now. I mean, I saw a clip the other day from one of the news. It might have been Newsmax or something. I saw it on Twitter, and where they interviewed the My Pillow guy, and he started talking about the rigged machines and all this and that, and they stopped him and they said we haven't, that is unconfirmed. We cannot talk about that here. And he kept talking. So we're done with you. And they. So, and the anchor actually got out of the chair and walked out. So
wow.
they've been told, yeah, he just got up and left.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't, he doesn't want to get sued.
Does that feel too? I mean, if I interview you and you say a bunch of stuff that's not true, I mean, does me saying, well, I'm not gonna let you say it's untrue, does that feel like it's a little too far to you? Or
Well, I guess it depends on what it is I'm saying. I mean, I
yeah,
met you half hour ago, right? So I mean, if I were to say disparaging things to you that would hurt your career and your reputation as a pastor, that certainly would make you cut me off pretty quickly, wouldn't it?
I would come looking for you.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
just kidding. I get you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one thing to I mean, people lie all the time. Politicians lie all the time. They lie to protect their jobs or their. I mean, you know, if they know information, they certainly can't release certain things that are critical. I mean, what's coming out now in the New York Times was that Trump was sicker than they led us to believe.
Right.
That they
Right.
almost put him on a ventilator. And so if I mean, that's not okay. He lied or they lied, but you know, he has the right to lie, but there's
Sure.
nothing criminally you can do about that.
Right.
Can't hurt
Right.
or harm anybody. So, you know, that's where the freedom of speech comes in.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
so, you know, you can't incite violence. You can't insult. You can't. You know, hate speech is not protected. And you know, yelling, the old adage, yelling fire in a movie. You know, a
Sure.
movie theater, that kind of thing.
I think you again. I keep getting you to repeat stuff. You said, what did you say about hate speech? Is not what?
Not protected, huh?
Yeah, it's not protected. I mean, it's, in other words, you know, you make statements that are hateful to you know, a racial, you know, racial epithets or I mean, you can say things, but if it generally harms somebody, and I'm again not a lawyer, my understanding is that that is not, you don't have those freedoms to. I mean, you can say it, but there are laws now that that will not protect you for those types of things. You know, because it can incite violence and it
Sure.
can incite all kinds of things, right? And that's why, well, I'm not going to get into that, but there are there are hate groups out there. I'll just be generic about this. There are hate groups. We all know who they are, but there are hate groups that will promote themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they know the minute they start disparaging someone else or another culture or race or whatever, that could cause a lot of trouble. Now, there are also some hate groups that don't care, and they're gonna, you know, because some of it is just rhetoric and they just say it,
Right.
and it's not going to mean anything. But if it's pointed at some person or some people specifically, then there's some more issue there. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Now it's the 2:38 down at the bottom of the hour. You're watching, listening, participating in Torn in Two here with Bob Gould and Pastor Melvin Burns. Of course, the topic today is Journalism 101. Bob, how do we, because people are so dug in to the right and to the left, how do we get people to get out of those encampments and to realize that they may be wrong and here's the truth?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be probably retired if I could answer that question. You know, if I had the answer to that, I just, it's so hard because, you know, you believe what you believe, and people are very, very stuck to what they believe. And it's almost like, you know, it's this whole thing where I'm on one corner of the sidewalk, someone else is on another corner of the sidewalk, and we see an accident happen, and we both have different stories from the perspective that we're seeing the accident happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it man, I don't know what we're going to do in this country to get people to be, you know, friendlier, and be more tolerant, I guess, of others' beliefs and opinions. But it's so polarized on both ends that it's very difficult. And you know,
Now, how would you teach that very thing to your students on a daily basis?
Well, you know, I'm not, again, I don't have all the answers here, but I would say this is that, you know, if they let's say we had President Trump was here campaigning in Lansing or in around the, you know, election time, and some students were like, I don't want to cover that. I don't want to cover that, you know. And I said, I don't care what side of the aisle you believe in. You need to cover a presidential rally because it's
Right.
It's first of all, it's an experience that you should as a journalist experience, you know, just be a part of. Because I love them. I love going to all of them. It's one of my favorite things is covering a political rally.
Right.
It's just from a behind the scenes aspect of things, it's pretty darn cool. I mean, I remember when President Bush came to Muskegon, and he was campaigning. It was Bush and Gore, I think, and
Yes.
you know, he went to Muskegon, then he was in Holland, and then he went to Battle Creek that same day, and I was following him the whole way. And I mean, that's exciting. And you know, and I don't, if it doesn't matter. I've covered Clinton and Bush and, you know, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. When that Air Force One lands, it's the coolest thing you've seen. So I always tell people, you know, you need to go in there. I don't care if you know, you need to be objective and tell the story, how it comes in. So that doesn't really answer your question, but it does kind of help you understand that you have to. There are certain things as journalists that you have to do, whether you like them or not. And
wait a minute, hold on, ding, 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 ding. I think the prizes just came down because you said you must be objective. You said the word for the day. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Did I get the bingo? I got the bingo, huh?
Yeah, you got the prize today. Go ahead, Melvin.
I was like, Bob, is that one of the biggest challenges you find with new students as they come in? Is that whole idea because so much subjective news and quotes is out there that learning the objectivity, is that one of your biggest challenges?
Yeah, I would say that. I would say the objectivity is really difficult. And I would also say that if you are, you know, it's very complicated because of, you know, what a lot of people believe is the truth.
Okay.
The facts are there, and yet there may be another side that says the facts are not there, but they have another belief of what they believe is the truth. So this makes it really difficult, really, because you say, well, where is it in there? Where is, you know? And so I have to try and tell students like that this seems, you know, even though this may seem logical or this is illogical, and you have to tell it straight down the middle. The other thing too is you got to be careful of is if you only tell one side of the story, or if there's a crazy side of the story that's completely not even worth covering, or you have to be careful covering it. You know, I mean, it's like if you Marjorie Taylor Greene down in Georgia, right? She's
oh boy,
she's whacked out, right? So she's got some crazy conspiracy theory beliefs, which you don't even believe is true, and you know, you can't believe that she's actually believing this stuff. And so it's like, how much do we cover this stuff? At what point do we, as the news media, you know, no longer even give her the time of day because all this stuff has been proven to be false, or it hasn't proven to be true, right? So, I mean, the fact that she at one point said that, you know, the Parkland shooting was a hoax, you know, so why give her that airtime? Why give her that chance?
Right.
So as like, if you're running a news department, you have to kind of think about, okay, I have to balance this out somehow. From my constituents, you know, my viewers who are, you know, in this district, do I cover this or do I not cover it? And you have to kind of think about, you know, what this is. And one other thing we talk a lot about in journalism, law and ethics is we say minimize harm and maximize truth. Okay.
Ding, 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 ding. You said
so
it's time to pass the break because he's preaching good. Hey, say it again, brother. Say it again.
Minimize. Yeah. So this is something I learned a long time ago from my mentors, and it's when you um, have like an ethical dilemma, for instance, that you're not sure you want to
Mm.
how do I cover this, because I don't know, this is tough. I mean, it could be something as tragic as a kid drowns in Muskegon Lake or whatever, right, or at the pier, because the waves knocked him over,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody gets on the media for knocking on the door and trying to talk to the parents, and some people say, well, you're exploiting this, and let these people have their piece. Um, what I always say is that, and this is one of the hardest things I've ever, as a journalist, it never got easy. And, the moment it gets easy, then it's time to get out of the business. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes, I don't want to say, again, it's not easier, but you learn ways to cope with it. So this is where you say, okay, how do I minimize the harm versus maximizing the truth? Do I minimize, I don't want to, how much harm am I going to do to the people that I'm knocking on the door to, this family who's grieving, versus telling the truth about, it's a real sad story that the warnings were out there not to go out to the pier when the waves were so high. And especially if you're not a good swimmer, or even if you are a good swimmer, it's not, what I mean? We bring these out here, and you could tell that story all day long. Don't go out of the pier. Don't go out of the pier. Nobody's going to believe it until somebody tragically dies from that. And so what we always say is, can you tell us about your son? Can you show us a picture so we can put a face to it? We want to honor this person and hope that this never happens again. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to minimize the harm we do to the family by maximizing the truth. And these are discussions that happen every day in a newsroom. And a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of people think they give us too much credit for what we do or don't do. In
Okay.
other words, they criticize the media and the news. And I'm not a big fan of this term, the media, because it's all encompassing, and it's sort of a stereotype, right?
Yeah.
When I worked in local news, we're just people we go to work, we sit around in a meeting at 9 a.m. We say, what do we want to cover today? We think, okay, these are the best stories. Sometimes there's breaking news, middle of the day, and we have to change our course. And then you have to make decisions. But we go cover our stories, and we try and bring it to the best of our ability to the public. And I don't think people understand that's kind of what that's what we do. It's not, we're not out to have some sort of conspiracy to, okay, let's see if we mislead the public this way, or if we, let's get into a secret meeting and decide how we're going to like manipulate the public in their opinion. I mean, we don't have the time for that. We got hours of news to fill a day. Right. So,
Right. Right. A
and-
question for you.
yeah.
How much has these things right here changed news?
That's a great question.
And I'm talking about, for people that don't see, I'm talking about telephones and video.
Yeah. Well, in a couple of different ways. One is I don't say most because I don't know the numbers really, but younger people are definitely getting their news from their phones, and they're getting it pushed to them through push notifications, breaking news events. It's not as much of, I'm going to tune into the 6 o'clock news as it once was. And so we have to kind of think about the future and how that's going to play out. When will this timed newscast disappear? I think it's going to be a while, especially local news. People still have this mindset but digital first is a big push in local media right now. Local news, get it to their website, get it to Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Get it out there first, and then we'll do it more in depth when we get to the newscast, right? And some stations are experimenting now with these digital newscasts where they're presenting more in-depth work online, and less of it, like a smaller piece of it on TV,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really, when it's done right, it's really great, because it's to tell a story in a minute 15 seconds is difficult sometimes, but you really want it. But the time constraints of a newscast and the attention span. But if it's done well, someone will sit down and watch a 10-minute story, if you're a 5-minute story.
Right. I tell you, if you look into Floyd case, if it wouldn't have been for a person taking out their phone or several people taking out their phones,
Right.
who knows if that would have ever been shot or seen. And we're seeing a lot of cases like that. If it wouldn't have been people taking out their phones and shooting the actual scene, it would never have been reported. We're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's for sure. I mean, the cameras on the phones have changed everything, and for the better. For the most part, for the better. In some cases, it's not for the better, but yeah, we're seeing a lot more. And I'll tell you this is that when I was working in TV, I lugged around a 20-pound camera and 15-pound tripod and tapes and all this stuff and gig bags and lights.
I feel you,
Right. And now we teach a class where we use our phone, and the images are beautiful. We make sure that it doesn't look like we are using a phone. We have a tripod and a case and a microphone that connects, so the audio is clean. It doesn't look like it's not vertical, it's not shaky, there's no smudges on the lens. Looks like amateur video. We make it look like you would never tell. You never know the difference.
Wow.
So that's what we teach that in a beginning class, and it's really fun because the students can take their gear anywhere with them. And so yeah, it's really really a great thing to have access to. The better the technology, so some days you want to curse the technology. I mean, usually at least 5 times a day, I'm cursing the technology. But I love it. I'm a tech guy, so when this stuff gets better and better, I just love it. I love the fact that you can screw on lenses on the back of those camera phones now and get really great images and telephoto. So yeah, so you have not only from a journalist point, but you have then the the consumer point of it, where all this stuff is being crowdsourced in, and you get video that's but you also have to look at it from what can be a damaging thing. The one kid that sued CNN, for he was at that MAGA rally, I think, or in DC. Remember, he was there and he was with a school, and he was yelling at this guy, and it was yeah, it was taken totally out of context, and all, and they settled. The family settled with the networks for a lot of money, because they, and so the kid wound up winning, because of how it looked pretty damaging when you watched it, and it
right.
kind of ruined this kid's life for what had happened, but it was out of context. So there are things like that where you got to be really careful, and that goes back to our beginning of the newscast, where you talk, or the beginning of the show here, you're talking about how do we verify and how do we fact check, and it's not just about the printed word. It's also it can be true, but maybe it's not. What's the word I'm looking for? It might be true, but not necessarily accurate.
Okay.
If that makes sense. You
Okay.
know what I mean?
Sure.
So like what you're watching a video and you're like, okay, well that happened. They didn't alter the video, but you've taken a piece of something out of context, and then it becomes not accurate. It's almost like this whole fight thing,
Right. What do you see is the future of journalism?
Well, we're kind of in it right now. We're starting to get in it now. The good thing is I teach broadcasting, and the broadcast is doing well. My students are getting jobs all across the country as reporters and producers and anchors. The newspaper industry is obviously suffering, and I'm sad for that, because I still love to read a good newspaper if it's worth it.
Right.
I'm an old school guy like that. Probably, I didn't graduate with a degree in journalism. I was a production video guy, but I grew up reading the Free Press in Detroit every day. I read the Free Press and I watched the news. So I should have had a journalism degree, I guess. But the future is, I think you're going to see a lot more of this. The online stuff is going to be bigger, and they're going to have to find a way to monetize that better, so that we can pay the journalists. Because if the problem is now you have less resources, newsrooms are decimated. They're not able to cover the stories they want to cover or need to cover for the community, and I think, look, we exist for a reason. It's part of the democracy, right? Journalism is part of this democracy. It's so important. You see the hashtag journalism matters, and it matters because, and I say this in every interview I do, and it is that we have to give a voice to the voiceless and hold the powerful accountable. I mean, that's it. In a nutshell,
Man,
that's it. We
said some good stuff. Say it again. Say it again.
I mean, look. Let me ask you this: how many times do you see the police chief, the mayor, the fire chief? They're on the governor. They're on TV every day or whatever, right? And that's fine. But those who are in your community that are struggling because they've been wronged, we don't hear from them as much as we should, right?
Right.
Yes.
And we need to do more of that. And the only way we're going to do that is when people support journalism. And if everybody wants it for free now. Everybody wants it because they open that can of worms. It's always free. Somebody's got to make a living doing it, and somebody's got to, and so we've got to make sure that these stories are told. And I'm all about. I'm a big storytelling guy. Like we preach storytelling in our classes. That's the number one thing. Telling good stories about people. Like it has to be about. I always say stories about people, not places or things. I mean, if the house is on fire, the flames are nice visuals. It's sensational video, but it's those people who lost their homes. Right. That's the story. It's not so much about the house on fire as it is the people inside. So, I think if there's one thing I want to get across, because we can talk truth and facts and verifying all day long, but we exist for a reason, and your local news still is relevant and needs to be, and people, your listeners and viewers have to support it. I mean, it is such a big thing, and I can't stress that enough. And that's why I teach what I do, because I did it for long enough, and now I'm giving back and trying to teach young journalists how to do it the right way.
How do you tell your future journalists to deal with when they work so hard on a story and it's told right out the gate that it's false, fake, not the truth, wrong? How do you tell them to deal with that?
They have to have a Teflon stomach. They have to learn how to ignore the comments. If there's something constructive, that's great. But if it's not, if it's some rhetoric that people are, I mean, listen, I see people I know, and they said, you know what, I got an email today saying the dress I wore on TV is garbage, and I looked, stop wearing that makeup. I mean, this is what people are concerned about, so it's hard. It's very hard. And, telling people, are you pregnant? They're not pregnant, so it sucks. And so we have to tell these people, like, you have to rise above. You have to rise above it, because if you don't, you're going to be, you're never going to make it. And it's not for the weak heart. This it's a tough gig. It's harder than it ever was. This past year with the pandemic, being a journalist and you're home, working from home a lot, you're out in the public, and you're susceptible to catching the virus, and you're out there trying to bring home the news, and it's sad. A lot of it's sad and depressing. That takes a toll after a while, and I just hope that people that are in it, my friends and colleagues across the country, can really get over it. They can get they can get over this hump until things settle down and they can start enjoying it a little more again.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest was Bob Gold, professor from MSU. My co-guest was Pastor Melvin Burns. Um, you've been watching, listening to Torn in Two. Bob, you have an open invitation. Remember, guys, don't forget those flowers and cards, or you could be in trouble. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. We have Bob Welsh will be here, and we have a great story about Black history in Vermont. Take care. God bless.
Thanks, Bob.
On behalf of everyone in our community and in healthcare, thank you for doing your part.
We appreciate your doing your part to keep us all safe.
When in public, stay 6 feet away from others.
Wash your hands often for at least 20 seconds with soap and water.
Wear a mask. Together, we are slowing the spread of this virus.
And together, we are saving lives.